I think one remarkable way the fight against terrorism has changed the world is by expanding the free world. You just need to ask the men and women of Afghanistan, ask the boys and Afghan girls who now attend schools, and watch with pride as the rule of law is established. Prevention must be our priority. The President turned and said on the day following September 11th, make sure this never happens again. I think Kofi Annan and a number of others have said that's a big order, a tall order. I don't know that it can be done, but it ought to be our objective. I began to mobilize the Department of Justice toward the prevention priority to save innocent lives. The United States of America desperately needs, is greatly in need of the cooperation and help of freedom-loving people who support the rule of law and reject the idea of terrorism and its extortion, to cooperate as we share information with them and they with us, so that together we can piece together enough of the fragments of the picture which is being assembled of acts which are yet to occur, so that we can interdict them and prevent them. For as we prevent terrorism, we reinforce freedom. There's been a lot of talk about somehow that the fight against terrorism is a sacrifice of freedom, and that security somehow is the sacrifice of freedom. There is only one reason for security, and it's freedom. That is what we are securing. We are securing values. And that's part and parcel, at least, of the ethic that is taught in America, that the things worth fighting for are values like freedom.
It's certainly become tougher for terrorists to operate, because I think there's a string of successes that we've scored since September 11th. But at the same time, though, I think the problem in countering terrorism is that it really is dealing with what one might almost describe the archetypal shark in the water. That terrorists, to survive, to continue to terrorize, to apply their trade of fear and intimidation, have to succeed, which means, like the shark in the water, they're constantly moving forward and changing direction and seeking to obviate or overcome whatever countermeasures or whatever means we put in their place. This is one of the main issues. What are we going to do next? I think we live fundamentally now in a state of insecurity and vulnerability. And it's obvious why. I mean, the stakes are much larger when one finds ricin being made in the back room of an apartment in London, when one finds an international connection that people who were admitted under very liberal asylum laws, who are living legally in a country, who are in fact benefiting from the state in terms of social welfare being provided to them, engaging in activities like that. And it's not just an ordinary bombing, it's something that has a much greater potential. We can see why we're turning towards the state, why we're looking towards the state to provide a level of security that's commensurate to a threat that is changing enormously. And that, I think, is the challenge now. We can talk about the context of security right now, but how are we going to respond? How are we going to react in the aftermath of the next spectacular? I mean, fortunately, we've been successful in the past 16 or 17 months since September 11th, that there hasn't been something at quite that level, but we saw how easy, especially in Bali and especially in Mombasa, how easy it is for all of a sudden our state of alert now, which we think is very heightened, all of a sudden to be thrust into an even higher level, and also to understand the consequences of even more disastrous things to come in the future.
The framing of our challenge as a war on terrorism is a problematic framing strategically and tactically. I think that what happened on September 11th should have been understood as a gross violation of human rights and a crime against humanity, and we should use all available means in terms of rule of law to go after those perpetrators while taking the appropriate security interventions as well. Unfortunately, our reading to a large extent is that what we have seen happen in the last year has been a granting of a partial victory to those that we've identified as the terrorists. What we have seen, even in long-standing democratic countries, is a severe curtailment of civil liberties. We have seen a curtailment of human rights. But I think that what we have seen is, I don't think we've got the balance right. And I think that we are seeing large levels of alienation of ordinary human beings across this planet from the broad processes of the war on terrorism. I don't think we see an engagement of the ordinary citizenry as it's being presented at the discourse level and in practice at the moment. We have to be careful that our response to terrorism doesn't exacerbate things. And I feel that the levels of alienation, not only in the Middle East, I would urge. I mean, if we hear the sentiments coming out of Western Europe, in various other parts of the world, unfortunately, we have to carry ordinary people with us. And I think the discourse and the engagement has alienated a lot of people. At the end of the day, this planet will only be secure when people across the world feel that they have an economic, a political, a cultural stake in this planet. And right now, all our attention has been diverted towards, in a way where I think the attention is not being put in an equitable way to address some of the fundamental things that can also contribute beyond simply military intervention.
Well, specifically, I was referring to this proposed attack on Iraq. If you do that, you are going to kill a lot of innocent people. You are going to make a lot of people very angry. Certainly, a lot of Muslim people are going to be very angry. And as you know, the terror attacks mounted was not carried out by the people who are most affected, who has been experiencing a lot of oppression. They're carried out by other people who are quite far removed from, say, what is happening in Palestine or in Chechnya or in Bosnia or in Afghanistan. The Saudis, they are very well off. They are living a good life, and yet they made this decision to crash their aircraft into a building. It's a horrible death that they entertained, but they did it because they were incensed over something, and we have to find out why are they so motivated, if you can say it, to do these horrible things. And if we understand what moves them, then we should try our best not to amplify it, not to create other situations which would anger them some more and lead more people perhaps to join this group of people and to commit acts of terror.
Last week, 13 people, peasants, innocent civilians, were beheaded by FARC. The first question we have to present is this political crime? No, this is sheer terrorism. And to fight terrorism, we need to ask for causes. Of course, Colombia has poverty, misery, inequality, but above all, Colombia has terrorism. Today, terrorism in Colombia is not a consequence of misery, a consequence of poverty. It's a cause. To fight terrorism, we have chosen to implement what I call a policy on democratic security. This policy of democratic security is based in the purpose to recover the rule of law, to observe human rights, to protect all Colombians. I hope that Colombians will understand every day more and more that we are facing not a political problem, that we are facing a terrorist problem, that my policy on security is not to defend one ideology, is to defend a pluralistic system, that my policy is convenient for a pluralistic society. I see a difference between the Iraqi problem and the Colombian problem. In the middle and in the long term, the Colombian problem is a bigger threat for the democratic community, even than the Iraqi problem. In the last years, drugs have destroyed more than 1,400,000 hectares of tropical jungle in Colombia. If we do not stop terrorism in Colombia, terrorism through drugs will destroy the Amazon basin. This could be a big, big threat against our regional democracy and against the world democracy.